different approaches that different segments of the church takes in recovery ministry. And for some parts of the church, it's very important to have the person have a conversion experience before they can really recover from addiction. And that works for some people. And that's wonderful that it does. God does sometimes intervene in a miraculous way in people's life. But from my experience, I don't see that as the norm. But that does work for some folks. What I see more often is a gradual process. I see God working in people's lives, wooing them and bringing him towards himself. And that's the approach that we take. Helping them to just begin to get open to the idea of who God is. Sometimes because of very negative experiences that they've had in their lives, they can have very distorted images of God, that God is judging them. God has very unrealistic expectations for them. God has abandoned them. God is judging them. So helping people and coming and where they are and meeting them where they are and just helping to help overcome some of those obstacles by proclamation, but also by demonstrating the grace and the love of God in their lives. And it just is a gradual process to help them to build step by step that relationship with God. And conversion will come, and I believe certainly salvation will come, and that certainly is between them and God in their lives. In my recovery work, I sometimes work with folks who grew up in the church and were active in youth group and Sunday school, went on mission trips, but still stumbled into addiction, whether that was from an injury and a prescription medication and things got out of hand, and they found themselves addicted. But sometimes my Christian friends have a little more struggle in recovery because there is still a part that thinks I should have this together. There's something that can get twisted in our mind, even though, and even in my own experience as a pastor, and I entered into recovery, we can get things a little bit twisted. We know about God's grace, and we know about his love for us, but we still get things twisted around where we think, I still need to pull it together. I still should get this right. And when I get this right, when I recover, when I can get rid of this, then God will be okay with me. Then I will have God's love, and then God will bless me. And we fall right into what we call that works righteousness. And so that just reinforces, again, that guilt and that shame, and they have trouble, and they can fall into that some distorted images of God. And what I needed to do, and what some of my other Christian friends needed to do, is to become willing to let go of everything we think we know. I'll put it back into me because I see it in other pattern of other folks. Letting go of everything I thought I knew about God in order to receive a fresh message from God about who he is and who I am. Because what I had known already wasn't working for and towards my recovery. And so I needed a fresh experience, a fresh knowledge of God. Some folks who come from conservative churches, especially, I don't want to bang on the conservative churches, but some folks who come from a background where that is already reinforced as they were growing up, where there is a tradition in their congregation where we don't talk about addiction, we don't talk about alcoholism, we don't talk about our sin, have a special problem with that, getting honest with God. And so that is a work for people who are already in faith, to be willing to let go of what they thought or what we think we know about God in order to receive a new word, a fresh word from God, in order to help us in our recovery. And that can be a major task. It can be a scary thing, to trust God enough to let go. What I said for myself is I always knew the words to Amazing Grace, but now I can sing the tune. So that's been part of my process, and I've run across that and recognize that with other folks that I work with as well. Grace is, by and large, it's almost like, what can I say about grace? It's the foundational piece of what we can extend to others. I keep going back to that, proclaiming and demonstrating. And demonstrating grace to folks who are in recovery. They need it so badly, to know that they are loved, to know that they are accepted, to see that unconditional, to see that undeserved favor being demonstrated in their lives, that yes, you're struggling, yes, you may have done some things that are destructive in your life and in the lives of others, but I'm not afraid of you. I still love you. I still want to see you be well, and to help communicate that message, that that's what God's will and intention is for you. It's for freedom, not to harm you, but like the passage from Jeremiah, God has a plan for us, and that plan is to set us free. And it's not to judge us, it's not to condemn us. And so God's grace, and God's grace is with us in the recovery process, in terms of giving us that special strength that we need to get through the difficult times as we turn to Him and we turn to others in the community.
Yes, it definitely is, and just the fact that it's legal, and that so many people, just the availability of it, so many people participate in it. I think something that really opened my eyes through the whole recovery process was I was asked to do an addiction timeline, and so you start off with when you first tried alcohol. And you just basically trace the occurrences of it through your life. And I was able to see through that how the frequency took over in my life, and something that I used to be in control of, and that it used to just be for fun and recreation and an occasional thing, I could see how it took over and eventually was controlling me. And there was certainly a period of time where I tried to act as though I was still in control of it. I would lie to myself and I would try to go a couple days without drinking just to prove to myself that I still was in control and I could stop when I wanted to. But then, of course, the third night, you had to celebrate that fact. I think my had mentioned that I had, struggled with doubts in the past, and really for me anymore, where I see God the most is I see lives being transformed. I see so many people that come in broken. They haven't seen their kids. Somebody else has custody of them. They haven't been employable. They haven't talked to family members in so long, and I see their lives getting turned around. And I don't have a real dramatic story myself. I haven't, lost everything, but I can still see how God turned things around in my life. Absolutely. I think my image when I was younger was one of somebody who was a God that was waiting for me to mess up. And there was a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And I now see God differently. I see him more as a God of love. And I see that, Jesus came to earth and he took on human form. And so he knows the struggles that are here. I mean, he created us. And he knows how our minds work. I used to feel really guilty for having doubts and questions. And now I sort of accept it, and I think that's how God made me. And he's not going to expect me to think a different way or try to think like somebody else. He's going to work with that in me, and that it's okay. And so I've come to, it's definitely evolved over time. So.
Actually, I've seen it in my own life by being exposed to this. Um, it's sort of like, I grew up in Western PA in a fairly protected environment. Didn't see a lot of the bad in the world. But it was almost like God was saying, Lee, you need to see a different part of the world. You need to see a different part of the society that you live in. And in a certain kind of way, it was kind of God's way of teaching me what I needed to fully come to appreciate: redemption, salvation, forgiveness, hope, grace. So in a lot of ways it helped me, and I've seen it in churches where they really have taken seriously. They're reaching out to people with substance use disorders. It amazingly transformed the life of the church, because now they're telling their stories to people who really need to hear those stories. Not stories of necessarily recovery from a substance use disorder, but just stories about life itself and how one encounters God in the course of their life. And so, churches that have taken it seriously have had much the same kind of experience that I've had with fully understanding, which has helped me, I think, become a better pastor, because I understand the brokenness of people, even when it's not related to substance use disorders.
I had mentioned that when my wife had left that time, I had already gone through rehab one time, and I didn't continue with it, so I didn't have any tools at all when that went bad. So the second time around, I took suggestions and worked the steps. And back in 2017, my brother passed away. He actually committed suicide. And that would be the hardest thing that I'd ever gone through in my life. To drink, or that I didn't want to drown that and numb the feelings a little bit, would definitely be a lie. It was in the front of my mind. But I had tools this time that I didn't have when I went through the divorce. I was able to go through that process and feel the feelings, and it was incredibly painful, but I could see the hand of God, how He, really worked through me and was able to get me through it. I had friends in recovery. I had meetings that I could go to now to help me get through these difficult times.
Resurrection Power is a recovery ministry. Our mission is to carry the message of God's love for addicts. And our primary strategy currently is to operate 4 recovery houses, 2 for men and 2 for women. And we are currently working on opening a 5th recovery house.